So when I'm a doctor and I'm trying to figure out if you have cancer, I'm going to do an x-ray, I'm going to do a blood test. I'm going to look inside you and I am going to make the determination of what's right and what's wrong. Now that works great in medicine because we have instruments that allow me to look inside you. The problem is that when it comes to thoughts and emotions and subjective experiences, no therapist can understand what's going on in another person. There's a difference between someone coming into my office and who's suicidal because their mind is not functioning correctly. This is mental illness. It is a pathology. Their thoughts are warped. I know what depression looks like. I know what bipolar disorder looks like. And half the men that I've worked with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most of the suicidal men that I work with, their mind isn't malfunctioning. They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living.
So now, what criteria or method does Dr. K use to distinguish between someone who wants to kill themselves and they're mentally ill versus someone who wants to kill themselves and they're not mentally ill?
What I think is illness is if you're 46 years old, you make $600,000 or $800,000 a year, you're married, you have 2 kids, you have a wife who's loving, faithful, you are tall, you're handsome, you're successful, and you want to kill yourself every single day.
So it seems like he associates being married with kids and wealthy as the ideal life.
Person is on a very low dose of medication, is really living life, is professionally successful in relationships, successful in family, just really doing a phenomenal job at life. It was early in my career, and the person was like, they were doing really well in life. They were like, before the heroin, were married, or still were married at that point, had kids, had 2 teenage children, very successful professionally. What about all this other stuff? Bro, what are you talking about? Have a family, have a career, have a life?
So if you're married with kids and wealthy and dissatisfied with your life, that means you're mentally ill and you don't know what you're doing. Well, obviously that has nothing to do with anything that's going on inside of the person. It has nothing to do with the person's physiology.
Because I can look at my own thoughts. No therapist can see my thoughts, no matter how good they are in the planet.
So if no therapist, regardless of how good they are, knows what Dr. K is thinking, how does he know that if someone's traditional and dissatisfied, their thoughts are warped? Because like in my research on mental health and different lifestyles, I've seen a bunch of different perspectives on what constitutes an ideal life.
Before I lived in a van, I did everything that society told me. What they told me to do, I did. I got married, I had kids, I got a job, I got a career, I worked, I bought, I did what they told me. And I was never happy. I followed the American dream, and the American dream was a nightmare for me. I was never happy the whole time.
No one on their deathbed says, I wish I'd gone to the office one more day or another hour every day. I wish I'd spent one more day just making money. I wish my 401k was bigger now that I'm dying. No one has ever said that. I just can't imagine that any sane person would ever say that. It's a mental illness now. I believe that even for an average person, it's become to some degree a mental illness. They surround themselves with possessions because life is so insecure that their possessions become their security.
Yeah, so you see how this concept mental illness just becomes like a subjective value judgment. So when Dr. K says someone is mentally ill because they're married with kids and wealthy and dissatisfied with their life, I call this orthodox psych. So orthodox psych is an ideology that uses the concept of like illness, sickness, disease, disorder, malfunction as a way to cancel out the idea that if you are traditional, you're married with kids and wealthy, that you can be dissatisfied. By saying that if you are married with kids and wealthy and dissatisfied, you're sick, you're ill, you have a disease, your mind is malfunctioning. You're not allowed to be dissatisfied in the trad life category. And if you're outside of the trad life, you're not allowed to be satisfied.
But don't you think that people should have the freedom to live their life in that way? I think human beings vary widely, in a huge way. And I think there's some human beings that find a very fulfilling life just reading books and traveling and experiencing different things and seeing art and doing whatever the fuck they want to do. And they don't necessarily have to have kids. to live a fulfilling life that way. And if they choose to do that with someone who they have a loving bond with and who they get married to, I don't think it's a bad thing that they don't want to have kids.
Fucking to be 36 years old and wake up one day and like pull yourself out of bed because I'm fucking happily married and like I've got a 2-year-old. I'm tired, but my life is good. I have a reason to get out of bed. What is way harder is to get out of bed when you have no reason to get out of bed.
Well, I guess we have to, maybe we're running into a question of, you know, now you get to the real fundamental
I
question.
think it's a fundamental freedom thing.
Yeah, we're not disagreeing, I guess, on the freedom aspect of it, because again, I'm not saying that you should be required to have kids.
But you're imposing your sensibilities on what you think is important in life to other people. But everybody has a different idea of what's important in life without hurting anyone.
This is why Dr. K functions more as like an Orthodox rabbi or priest or something, where it is your duty, it is your purpose to get married and have kids. It's not up to you to determine the significance or insignificance of having a family. It is mandatory. You have to have a family. You have to live like this.
And you being a man is not just about who you think you are or even who you want to be. It is about you pointing back to the one who made you. It's about you pointing back to the purpose for which he made you. And it's about you pointing back to the relationship that he intends for you to have with the opposite sex. And, you know, one of the things you mentioned is men not wanting to be married. That's an incredibly important part of the picture of what it means to be a man. This idea that we would be in a relationship, that we would be the head of a household, that we would be, like I said, priest, prophet, provider, protector within that context. All of that gives us not only purpose, but it gives us greater understanding of what masculinity is all about.